Hi everybody, Captain Al speaking with your training tips designed to help make you a better, more knowledgeable flight simmer, pilot, or aviation enthusiast. Let's strap in and lower the HUD and see what is on the horizon for today. Our briefing today will cover holding patterns for the 747-8 and also applies to the 747-400. Quite frequently in these jet aircraft that we fly, we come against up against the max holding speeds. And so we need to be aware of what those speeds are. We can always exceed these speeds, but we have to let ATC know that we want to exceed these speeds. We can request a higher speed, and then ATC will normally approve it with no problem. There are FAA maximum holding speed requirements, and there are ICAO maximum holding speed requirements. Up to 6,000 feet, the maximum speed is 200 knots for the FAA. Above 6,000 to 14,000, it's 230 knots max, and then above 14,000, it's 265 knots maximum. ICAO up to 14,000 feet, it's 230 knots max. Above 14,000 to 20,000 feet, it's 240 knots max. Above 20,000 feet to 34,000 feet, 265 knots max. And then above 34,000 feet, it's 0.83 Mach. We're going to look at two different ways to enter a holding pattern. One would be the automatic method, and the other would be a manual method. Most airline pilots, actually I could say all airline pilots, will use the first method, and that is the automatic way. And that's using the legs page with the hold at boxes in order to enter a fix. Once we have that fix in, we'll get the FMC hold page, and then from there we can enter the parameters as far as which way we're going to hold as requested by ATC. And then the airplane can fly in lateral navigation or LNAV to enter that holding pattern automatically. In VNAV, it'll even slow the airplane down to the best holding speed as you approach the fix. The other method would be a manual method using heading select and timing. Not normally the method that would be used. Nobody would want to put themselves through that. However, it is good to know because as a 747 pilot, you certainly should be aware that when the airplane approaches the fix and you're in LNAV, what the airplane is going to do, what kind of holding pattern entry it's going to make, so that you can follow along and monitor that it's doing the proper thing. MI requested the manual method to take a look at that for using heading select and how to figure out the holding pattern entry and timing requirements and things like that. So I thought we'd take a look at it. But again, number one, the automatic way is the preferred way, and that's the way most people would do it in this aircraft. So here's an example of a holding fix depicted by the red dot. We're going to be coming into that fix at 4 different directions. It's a standard holding pattern, which is right turns. We always, when we're manually doing this, want to accomplish a 1-minute inbound leg up to 14,000 feet. And if you're above 14,000 feet, it would be a 1.5-minute inbound leg. You could also request, or ATC could give you, a set distance like 5-mile legs or 10-mile legs, and then you could do a distance instead of a time. If you look at the blue circle here, that would represent a compass rose. Heading would be at the top. And in order to determine the holding pattern entry, we would draw an imaginary 70-110 line, 70 to the right, 110 to the left. And that would create 3 quadrants. One would be the teardrop quadrant, the other would be a parallel quadrant, and the other would be a direct quadrant. When you're doing standard holding, like we're doing in this case, then the 70 degree would be to the right, the 110 to the left, and direct would be everything in this hemisphere. If you're doing a non-standard holding pattern, then the 70 would be to the left, the 110 would be to the right, and direct would be everything else in that 180-degree quadrant. If you're doing this manually, we're going to be trying to adjust the outbound leg via time so that the inbound leg can come out to 1 minute if you're below 14,000 feet. And you're also going to be adjusting the heading depending on what the wind is doing in order to, as closely as possible, roll out on this inbound course to the station without overshooting or undershooting. So the whole thing is adjustment. We're trying to make adjustments for heading and adjustments for time in order to get the time right on the inbound leg and also the rolling out right on course to the inbound leg. Here's the first example. We're down here at the little airplane symbol here. We're going to be approaching the fix on a heading to 020, and the clearance is going to be to hold south on the 180-degree radial standard holding. So again, since we're on a 020 heading, we can draw our imaginary 7110 line, and everything in this quadrant would be parallel, everything in this quadrant would be teardrop, everything in this quadrant would be direct entry. We determine this by the radial outbound. In this case, we're holding south on the 180-degree radial. So we would look at where does 180 fall on the compass rose. And you can see the reciprocal of 020 would be 200. 180 would fall here. It is in the direct quadrant. So as we go into the fix, it would make sense that all we do is hit the fix and then start a turn outbound on the 180 heading for the appropriate time, and then turn back inbound to intercept the 360 course into the station, hit the fix, and then commence our hold. Here's another example, again with the north being at the top of the display here. There's our airplane. We're coming in on a heading of 330. And again, the clearance is the same, hold south in the 180-degree radial standard holding. So again, we draw our imaginary 7110 line, and where is the 180 radial now? It's right here. Again, the reciprocal of 330 would be 150. Where does 180 fall? It's right here. It's in the direct quadrant, so we're going to make a direct entry. So flying in, we'd come in on a 330 heading, and once we cross the fix, we would go ahead and make a right turn then to a heading of 180, and then again adjust our time and adjust our heading as necessary to roll out to get a 1 minute inbound course if we're below 14,000 feet, and roll out as closely as possible to that course to the station to then commence the hold. Here's another example. Now we're up here and we're heading 140 into the fix. Clearance is the same, hold south on the 180-degree radial standard holding. We would again look at our 140 heading, draw the imaginary 7110 line. 140 plus 70 would be 210, so 210 would be here. And 180 falls between 140 and 210. And so we're in the teardrop quadrant now, so we're going to make a teardrop entry. When you make a teardrop entry with standard holding, we're going to subtract 30 degrees from the radial to get the teardrop heading that we want once we cross the fix. So in this case, 180 minus 30 would be 150. So we'll be heading 140. When we cross the fix, we'll pick up a heading 150, go on our outbound leg, turn inbound on the 360 inbound course, hit the fix, and then commence our holding pattern. Here's our last example where we're here. We're heading 240 into the fix, and the clearance is the same, hold south on the 180-degree radial standard holding. So we can again draw our 7110 line, and again 240 minus 110 will be 130. between 130 and 240 falls 180. So the 180 now falls in the parallel quadrant. So we're going to do a parallel entry. So we'll come into the fix, hit the fix, and then turn left to a heading of 180, which would be our parallel entry, and then make another left turn to re-intercept the 360 course inbound, hit the fix, and then commence the holding pattern. And here's the last example, and this would be a non-standard holding pattern. So if you were to now have left turns instead of right turns, it's the same hold south in the 180 degree radial, left turns. So instead of doing right turns, we're doing left turns, and now we would reverse. The 70 degrees would go to the left, the 110 would go to the right, and the rest would be the direct quadrant. The 180 degree sphere here would be direct. So now we can see we've got 240 would be our course inbound, or our heading inbound to the fix. 240 minus 70 would be 170. 180 falls between 170 and 240. We're going to do a teardrop entry once we hit this fix. So as we come in now, instead of subtracting 30 degrees, we're going to add 30 degrees to our outbound course, which is the 180 radial. So now our teardrop heading would be 210. So as we come in here on a heading of 180, once we cross the fix, then we're going to go to a 210 heading and maintain that until our desired time is up. And then we're going to make another left turn inbound to the 360 inbound course, and then make our standard, or not our standard, but our non-standard hold with left turns to the fix. So we'd be coming in again on a 240 heading. We would then make a left turn to a 210 heading, which would be our teardrop entry, and then make the left turn back inbound on the 360 inbound course, and then commence the turn to the left. In order to do an automatic method of the hold, you have to be holding at a fix that is a part of your legs page. You can't hold at a fix that's not on your legs page, so you'd have to put the fix in first and make sure it's part of your route, and then you can hold there. If you try to hold at a point that's not on your legs page, in the scratch pad, when you put it in the boxes, it'll say in the scratch pad, it'll say hold at, and whatever the fix is. Hold at SEA, hold at FGT, and it will not create the hold because it's trying to tell you that you're trying to hold at a fix that's not on your legs page. They almost should have put a question mark after that. It would have made more sense. You know, this is where engineers designed this and not pilots, because that message really means nothing to us. Hold at SEA or hold at FGT or hold at XYZ doesn't mean anything. But what it means is you're trying to hold at a point that's not on your legs page. And so, again, it would have been better if they put a question mark next to it saying hold at FGT. I don't know what you're talking about. I can't, because it's not part of my legs page. So that's the first thing. You have to have a point that's on your legs page, part of your route, before you can hold there. Then you're going to enter it as an inbound course or a radial. It's your choice. If it's at a VOR, it's going to be given to you as a radial, so it's easiest to just put it in as a radial. If it's a fix that's other than a VOR, like just a waypoint or something like that, then usually they'll give you the inbound course that you're going to be holding on, and then that would be easy to put that in. Default is always right turns. That's standard holding. We can change it to left turns. And then, of course, you can put in an EFC time. It'll give us our holding time available. There's also a method on the legs page to do a present position hold. If you weren't specifying a holding fix with a certain direction, and ATC just wants you to hold at your present position with standard holding, we can do that as well by creating a latitude, longitude where we are right now at the time of execution, it'll update to exactly where you are and then start holding with right turns. If you're in VNAV, the airplane will also slow down automatically when the indicated airspeed Mach window is blank. It'll slow down to your best holding speed. Now that holding speed can be a little too slow sometimes if you're bouncing around in turbulence. So it's very close to your ref plus 80 speed, very close to the up bug. And in some cases that could be a little too slow, especially in turbulence. So you always have the ability to speed intervene and bump it up to what you want to maintain and not what the computer is telling you is the best economical speed. So here's an example. We're going to be holding at Farmington VOR. It's Fox Golf Tango. We push the hold key and we get the legs page with hold at boxes. If there was a holding pattern that was already in there as part of your route, like if you programmed in an approach and you had a missed approach hold, then when you push that hold key, you'll get that holding fix for that missed approach hold. But if there's no holding patterns in your route, like there are not in this case, then when you push the hold key, you'll get a legs page, but at the bottom, you'll have hold at boxes at 6 left, and you'll have a PPAUSE caroted prompt as 6 right. The PPAUSE, present position prompt, allows you to hold at your present position. It'll create a latitude, longitude. You could change it to left turns if you needed to, and then execute it, and it will hold at the exact point where you executed it. The boxes are asking you where do you want to hold at what point. And again, remember we said it has to be part of your legs page, part of your routing to be able to hold there. So let's say I wanted to hold at Seattle and I put in SEA and I put that in the boxes right now. All it would show in the scratch pad is hold at SEA. That's what it would say, hold at SEA. And again, that's where I say it should have a question mark because it's telling you you're trying to hold at a fix that's not up here. It's not part of your legs page. But Farmington is part of our legs page, so we can hold there. So we could bring Farmington down to the scratch pad, put FGT in the scratch pad, and then line select it into the boxes. So we push 1 left, and then it would come to the scratch pad, push 6 left, it would go into the boxes, and then you would have this page. You would have the hold page for Farmington, hasn't been executed yet. It would automatically default to your inbound course with right turns. Whatever your present inbound course is, that's what it's going to show. Then you can change it. You can change the inbound course. You can change the radial. You can specify it as a radial or an inbound course, whatever your choice is. The leg time is automatic. If you're below 14,000, 1 minute, above 14,000, 1.5. You want to make it a leg distance, that'll replace the leg time. So we could put in 10-mile legs if we were assigned that. You can specify an altitude or a speed target for the holding pattern. It'll automatically give you the fix ETA and update each time you cross the fix. You can put in an EFC time telling the computer that you plan on holding for this amount of time, and then the computer would recalculate all your ETAs and fuel remaining to the destination based on the fact that you're going to be holding for the next hour, let's say. The holding time available would show up here. That'll give you the total time that you can stay in the hold and leave the hold, arrive at your destination, and your reserve fuel on the performance initialization page will still be intact. And then your best speed is the speed that it's going to slow down to in VNAV. And as I said earlier, that might be a little too slow. If it's not, you can leave it that way. And the window will be blank and the airplane would slow down to cross the fix at that speed. But if we didn't like that speed, we could always open the window. We could intervene on the speed ourselves and bump that up another 20 knots if we didn't like how slow that was. So here we're going to put that same radial in. We're holding south on the 180 radial. Because it's a radial, I'm going to put it on the radial line. Now, I don't have to do that, but it's the easiest to do that. I could convert this to the reciprocal and say, oh, 180, that's 360. So I could put 360 or 000 and put it up here on the inbound course line. But that's a lot of work. I'm figuring out a reciprocal, so why not just put it in as a radial? Because that's how it was given because it's a VOR. So it's the easiest just to stick it on the radial line. When we do that, you'll notice that the computer will automatically figure out the quadrant. It says 180, that's south, and it'll put in the reciprocal of 180, which is 000. And the default is always right turns. Now, all the computer looks at is the number. It doesn't care about anything else other than this number. So if you put, for example, in this case, if you put west/180 and put it up there, it'll change it to south, because it's looking at that number and saying that's south, that's not west, dummy, and it'll put that in there for you. So if you put in the quadrant, which you don't have to, but if you put in southeast/040 and put that in there, it's going to change it to northeast, because it knows 040 is northeast quadrant, not the other one. And then, of course, when you look at your ND, in this case, we got the look behind us and the full compass rose. You can kind of look at it and say, does this make sense? And sure enough, there's Farmington, Fox Golf Tango. We're holding south of the fix. We're standard hold, which is right turns. Our inbound course is going to be 360 to the fix. Our outbound course is going to be 180 from the fix. So we always look at it and say, does that make sense? And in this case, it does. Okay, let's go over the virtual simulator, and we'll look at both holding manually and holding automatically. Okay, we're in the simulator on the runway. We're at Minneapolis, runway 30 left. We've got 5,000 set in the MCP. We're going to take off. We're going to make a left turn direct to Fox Golf Tango. We got LNAV and VNAV armed. LNAV will engage at 50 feet. We won't make a turn until 400 feet. We'll retract flaps, and first holding pattern we're going to do is the manual method. We'll be holding, like in the example in the ground training, we'll be holding south on the 180 degree radial, standard holding, which will be right turns. And with that, we'll release the parking brake and we'll take off. We're in the dash 8, so we're going to set 45% N1. Stabilize, and then we'll push toga. Thrust will advance to the D-rated takeoff 52 Celsius that we have set. And we'll keep the airplane straight with the rudder, transition to actually nose wheel, and then we'll transition to rudder at about 40 to 60 knots. By 80 knots, the power set. And we check that.
Rotate. Positive rate of climb.
Comes the gear up. Airplane's going to start a turn now. It's in LNAV. We'll stay flying straight ahead till 400 feet, and then we'll start the turn. So we'll go ahead and start the turn now. And we're going to go ahead and go inside. We'll get the autopilot engaged. And I'll go ahead and select flap 5. Go ahead and select flaps 1. And we'll go ahead and select flaps up. And we'll do our after takeoff checklist when the flaps are up. And you can see we're heading toward Farmington on the captain's ND. We're going to transition here to flight level change just because VNAV has been overshooting a little bit. And I'll bring back the speed to 250 for now. And after takeoff checklist is complete, and we're about coming up on 10 miles from Farmington. We'll bring up the ND on the captain. We'll go to the VOR mode. We'll bring up the CDU. And since we're going to the hold, we're going to start slowing down. We'll match our heading bug to the heading to Farmington. And we'll start to slow down. We'll go to flaps 1. And we'll go to the NavRad page, and we're going to put in Farmington VOR, Fox Golf Tango. You can see we're on the 333 radial, so the reciprocal of that would be 153, so we'll put in the 150 radial, 150 inbound course. The way we do that is we put a Farmington FGT, and we'll put a slash and 150. And we put that on top of Farmington, then that'll give us the course. We'll go to heading select and make a cut towards that. And we'll go to flaps 5, and we'll slow down to 200 knots. That's our max, up to 6,000 feet. Course is starting to center, 4 miles from the fix. So we'll go back to 150 course. We'll go to the center mode on the ND, and we're going to hold south on the 180 radial. And you can see that the needle's getting kind of funky as we get within a couple miles from the fix, so we're not going to chase it. 180 lies right here. If we draw our 7110 line, 70 degrees from 150 would be 220. So here's our 7110 line. The 180 is in between the 150 and the 220. So we're going to do a teardrop heading, teardrop entry. And the teardrop entry course is going to be 30 degrees less than the radial. 30 degrees less than 180 would be 150. So you can see we're just about on the course right now, on the heading 150. We're waiting for the to from to change. It just did. And now we'll go to a heading of 150. So we're already in heading select. We're on a heading to 150. We'll go ahead and move over here to get our clock. A little bit late on it, but we'll hack our clock. We got a tailwind, so we're going to go out about, we're a little late on hacking the clock. We'll go out about 50 seconds and then come back in. We've got about a 7-knot tailwind, and since we were a little late on the clock. This is the teardrop entry again. We're on a 150 heading. We'll turn back to the right to our inbound course of 360, and then we'll set the course of 360 inbound course or the 180 radial. There's about 45 seconds. Here comes 50 seconds, and we'll spin the heading bug around. We'll go to about a heading of 330, maybe a 30-degree cut. We'll see how the needle moves as we come inbound. There's 330. Now we'll go to the NavRad page, and we'll put in our inbound course of 360, 000. And that is the inbound course. The 180 is the radial. The inbound course is the reciprocal of 360. And you can see we're taking a 30-degree cut. Now when the needle starts to move, it should be right around 90 degrees. You know, if it starts to move before that, we're probably going to overshoot it. If it starts to move way after that, we're probably going to undershoot it. It's starting to move already. That means we'll probably overshoot it. So I'm going to start turning inbound right now. I'll probably make a correction right now to compensate for the fact that we're going to fly through it. Now we do have a quartering, we'll have a quartering headwind as we come around, so we're not going to, we might overshoot it a little bit, but then we'll probably come right back. And we'll reset our clock. And as soon as we roll out, we'll set the time in and see how we're doing for a minute inbound leg. You can see it's turning into a quartering headwind now on the ND. So it's probably going to start to come back in again. It looks like we're overshooting, which we did. But now it'll start to come back in pretty rapidly. So I'm not going to stay at this cut for very long. And we can hack our clock inbound now and see how we're doing. It'll take some adjustment to get the timing and the heading right. You can see the course is starting to come back in now, so I'll start to bring the heading back in. It's going to tend to overshoot us, if anything, so. So you can see I'm just kind of playing with the heading, bracketing it to stay on course. Now as we get within a couple miles, which we are right now, the needle will start to get a little funky, so we don't worry about it if it starts to go off. We'll just hold our course. Coming up on a minute inbound. You're about 0.8 miles from the fix. There's a minute. There's the to from just changed, and it's about 1 minute and 5 seconds. We'll start the turn outbound. So pretty close on the inbound leg. And we'll go to a heading of 180. So this is how we would, again, do the holding pattern if we have to do it manually, which you can see is kind of a lot of work. That's why nobody does it this way. Unless you had to, if we didn't have LNAV and we didn't have the FMC and we were doing everything in heading select, we'd have to do it this way. So we'll reset the clock. When we get outbound, again, when we get station passage, we'll start the time outbound. It was pretty good, so we'll maybe do 55 seconds this time. We do have a tailwind. Heading wise, it's going to be maybe, we'll see, probably make a little bit of a correction past south. I think we'll have a little bit of a crosswind, a tailwind with a crosswind slightly. So now I'm waiting for the to from indicator to change to sequence again, indicating we've passed the station. And then we'll hack the clock for that 55 seconds outbound. You can see it's a little bit quartering to the right there, so we'll maybe take just a slight cut at it. Maybe we'll try for about a 185 heading or so. And then we did get the station. Oh yeah, we got the station passage, so we'll hack our clock. Maybe a little bit late. We'll go out for about 55 seconds. I was maybe a little late hacking the clock there. And might just take a little less of a cut in the heading. But this is what you have to do. You have to bracket your heading and adjust your time. You're trying to maintain that 1 minute inbound leg, and you're trying to roll out on the course and not overshoot or undershoot. There's 50 seconds, and we'll go ahead and start our turn now. Again, I'll initially put it on a 330 heading to intercept, but we'll see as the needle moves what we have to do with the heading bug. We may keep it right there, or we may start to move it if it starts to look like it's going to overshoot. Again, once I'm inbound, I'll hack the clock. Needle's starting to move, so chances are we're going to overshoot again. I'll give it a little cut again to the right because it looks like we're going to overshoot through it. But I know I've got that quartering headwind, so I know it's going to push me back. So I probably don't need too much of a cut here to correct for it. And as the wings come level, we'll hack our clock. The clock started. Now you can see the other, whoops, this clock started now. You know, we also have distance here, so we know as long as we don't go more than 10 nautical miles out that we're not going to exceed any holding airspace. So I'm using a timing method, but at the same time, you've got that distance, that DME distance that you can look at. We're within 2 miles of the fix, so again, we're not going to chase the heading. If it needle's going to start to gyrate a little bit as we approach station passage, so. And you can see that there is a minute right there, and there's station passage, so close enough for government work. And we'd start our turn outbound again. Okay, we're going to go to a heading of 050 this time, and kind of leave Farmington and then go back to it and hold using the automatic method. So we'll reset the clock. We're going to bring Farmington back from manual tuning to automatic tuning. So we do that by simply deleting it. And that'll revert it back to auto tuning or route tuning. If Farmington were in there, you could see a R there for route tuning. Notice nothing on the VOR now because there's no manual tuning here. There's no course. You'll notice when I put that back in, if I were to put that back in manually, that it will, and let me put a course in again. Let's put that 180 inbound course there. And let's go to the VOR selection on there. So looking at the VOR mode now, when you have something manually tuned in here, this is raw data. Your needle, your course deviation indicator, your to from indicator, this is raw data. And these needles, the VOR needle, the skinny needle that I turned on here is raw data. All this stuff is raw data, but when I go back to the map, this is what comes in also when you tune Farmington manually. The Farmington VOR goes in green. You'll have a 180 course, which is what you put in, and you'll have the reciprocal of 360. This is computer generated data. The needle here is raw data. The VOR mode is raw data. This is computer generated data. So we'll delete that again. Revert it back to auto tuning. And now let's go to our legs page. Notice Fox Golf Tango is not in there. We'll put it back in there. Oops. Fox Golf Tango. Yeah, for some reason that's an anomaly in here. When you in the PMDG, you put it back in, it doesn't go in. We can kind of fix that by fooling that. We can go direct to Gopher. And then we'll go direct Farmington. And then that'll at least get it in there, and then we go direct Farmington. I don't know why it's doing that, but it won't accept it for some reason. So we'll go direct Farmington, we'll arm LNAV, and we'll head back to Farmington. We'll put our heading bug to course. And we'll go back to the expanded compass rose. And now we're going to go back to Farmington and hold at Farmington, and this time we're going to use the automatics to do that. So you'll notice that if I were to put an approach in, like if I put the ILS 30 left in, and I execute that, there's a discontinuity now between Farmington and the approach. But you'll notice there is a missed approach at Gopher. And because there's a holding pattern in our route, currently, when I push the hold key, the hold at Gopher is going to come up because we have a holding pattern that's part of our route. So when I push that, there's the hold, the missed approach hold for the ILS 30 left. You'll notice there's a next hold prompt here that allows you to get to the legs page with hold at boxes so that you can now hold at Farmington. If I were to take out that approach, let's bring Gopher the scratch pad, go back to the previous page, we'll do that, we'll delete Gopher and the hold at Gopher, and now we'll execute it. Okay, now if I push the hold key, there is no holding pattern in here, so it's just going to directly give me the legs page with hold at boxes. So those are the two differences. You know, if there's a hold in your route, it's going to show you that hold, and you can go next hold to get to hold at Farmington, and you'll get that legs page with hold at boxes. Or if there's no holding pattern in your route like there is now, we would just go ahead and select the hold function key, and then you'll get the legs page with hold at boxes. You can hold at your present position by pushing that P-pause, and that creates a lat long where you are right now, and it'll update with you, and once I execute it, it's going to hold exactly at that position where I execute it. We'll erase that. Okay, we're going to want to put in our hold now. Again, we're at 200 knots, so that's fine. That's our max holding speed. We're going to hold again south on the 180 degree radial with standard holding. So we'll push the hold key, get the legs page of the hold at boxes, bring Farmington to the scratch pad, put it in the boxes. It's 6 left. It defaults to your inbound course with right turns. We want to make it the 180 radial, so we'll put in 180. When you do that, it goes in the radial line. The computer figures out the number to give you the quadrant. So it says 180 is south. And we want right turns and 360 inbound. If we want left turns, we just type L in there and change it to left turns. If we want to go back to right turns, just type R in there and go back to right turns. And let's see, we're 3 miles. We still got a little time here. So notice if I even put west/180 and try to put that in, it would correct it and just say, no, it's not west, it's south. So I can put, the number is going to determine the quadrant. And we'll go ahead and execute that. And notice we're just coming up on Farmington VOR. You're going to notice the hold page becomes more active once we cross the VOR. We can see from again, using our 7110, that it's going to do a parallel entry because we're within the 110 degree line here. If you made a 7110 line, your 180's right here. You can see now that we crossed the fix, we have an exit hold prompt that just came up. You see things turn colors here now because the hold is active. Now it does say active Route 1 hold. And you notice the airplane is turning to do a parallel entry into the holding pattern. Again, I'll update my course. We'll go back to the expanded mode. Bring the range down just a little bit. Oops, that's not what I wanted. You notice it does show like it's not right on the magenta line. That's okay. In the holding pattern entry, it's going to do that. It's not outside protected airspace. It's well within protected airspace. But it will make a turn left to go to a parallel entry. It's going to turn left again to re-enter back to Farmington, and then make right-hand pattern for the standard holding. So it's starting its turn back. We'll update our heading bug to course. Notice again the inbound leg is for 1 minute. The inbound course is 000. We're doing right turns. We're holding south on the 180 degree radial. When we will look at Farmington VOR, we always ask ourselves when we put that in, does that make sense? And it does. If you go back to the center mode, you can see here's Farmington, there's south. We're holding south of the VOR. It's the 180 radial. It's the 360 inbound course with right turns. Again, we could change this to a leg distance if we wanted to. We could put an EFC time in here. If we're going to hold here for the next 20 minutes, we could put an EFC time. It would adjust all our ETA and fuel remaining to update, basically telling the computer that we're going to stay here for 20 minutes. And then you can see the holding time available. It says it's 6 hours and 51 minutes that we could stay here in the holding pattern and then proceed on our route, which there is nothing in here now, but it says we could proceed on our route and then end up at our destination with the reserve fuel that we put in intact. So we had put in, I think I put in 20,000 pounds for the reserves. And so that means that if we did have a route in there, we could stay in this holding pattern for almost 7 hours, leave the fix, go to our destination, arrive at our destination, and our reserve fuel would still be good at 20,000 pounds. It's maybe a little too shy in this Dash 8 airplane. Best holding speed you can see is 195. We're holding 200, which is fine with the flaps at 5. You can see it doesn't necessarily try to intercept the course inbound. It just goes back to, it just made a left turn and went back to Farmington. Now it's going to make the right turn for the standard holding. Now, if we were to exit the hold, it really depends on where you are in the outbound leg as far as what it does. If you're in this position where we are now, or if you're in this position here, it's just going to shorten up the holding pattern. It'll just go in a circle basically. If you're about halfway, it'll shorten up the holding pattern. If you're 2/3 or more of the way out, it'll leave the holding pattern the same length, and you'll just fly the same holding pattern, hit the fix, and then leave and go to your next waypoint. So it either shortens it up or it leaves it the same. If you're less than 2/3 of the way out, it will shorten it up. If you're more than 2/3 of the way out, it will keep it the same length. So we'll go ahead and exit the hold this time, and we'll see that it'll completely shorten it up to a circle basically. And we'll execute it. And now what it's going to do is go back to the fix and then leave the fix and go to our next waypoint. In this case, you can see we don't have a next waypoint in there, so in this case it would just hit the fix. It'll stay in LNAV, and it'll maintain that heading that it crossed the fix at, and it goes into what's called a heading hold submode. And so the airplane will stay in LNAV. You'll get a message in your scratch pad saying end of route, and the airplane basically goes into a heading mode, but it doesn't tell you it's in a heading mode. It still stays in LNAV, but it's in a what's called a heading hold submode. And it basically flies off into the sunset until you tell it to do something otherwise. It almost would have been good to me that it would have changed, this is my opinion anyway, that it would have been better if it went into heading hold, because at least then there'd be a change. And it would tell you that, oh, we're not in LNAV anymore, we're in heading hold. And, the way it is designed now, it just stays in LNAV. And yeah, you got a scratch pad message telling you there's no route in there. But if you're not paying attention, the airplane could just, fly off into no man's land. So we'll take a look at that, and then we'll finish up this briefing on holding. Again, we did the manual method using the 7110 line and figuring out your holding pattern entry, and then using time and heading corrections to get the inbound leg at 1 minute and to correct outbound for the heading, using the VOR mode and using the heading select. Automatic, of course, using the hold page and using LNAV to enter the hold automatically. That would be the preferred way of doing it. That's how everybody does it in this airplane. Okay, about to cross the fix. And you'll see as we cross the fix, it goes away because we exited the hold. We executed it, set exit armed. And now what it's going to do is simply roll out wings level and hold that heading. So it's gone into what's called a heading hold submode. And you can see we get a message saying we have an FMC message, and you can see in the scratch pad we have end of route. And now the airplane basically just kind of flies straight ahead, and it'll keep doing so until we tell it otherwise. This is where I think it would have been, to me, it would have made more sense for this to go to heading hold right now, and that would alert you that there's a FMC change, and you might inquire more about, well, why is it in heading hold? Anyhow, that completes the briefing on the hold. Thanks for watching. Okay, let's lower the HUD and go flying. Until our next briefing, keep the blue side up. Captain Al, out.